put your messages in the chat instead of speaking up with your questions. So that's up to you. The next slide will show you just a couple of tools on Zoom for those that are not familiar. If you want to put something in the chat on the bottom, and for some folks it may be on the top of their screen, there's a little chat bubble. You can click on that and a window will open up and you can put in a note for that everyone can see, or if you have a question for one of the facilitators, you can also just do a direct chat, that's fine. And the next slide will show you how to raise your hand if you have a question or you'd like us to know that you have something to add. If you go to the reactions, which is also on that same toolbar, you can click on reactions and there's a raise hand feature, which you see there on the bottom. And of course, if you have any issues, you can unmute yourself and just say, I need help. So we want to make sure that everybody is able to participate in the conversation. So I want to go ahead and introduce the project team. There are a lot of people who are working on this project. We have representatives from the county's Department of Transportation. As I mentioned, I'm the project manager for the BRT project. We also have Corey Pitts and I believe Joanna Conklin and a few other members of the Department of Transportation are here tonight. And we have a consultant team who you'll also be hearing from, Jamie Henson, John Manzoni, Tara Hopworth, and Nadia Kutisheva, who are here and will be doing some of the presentation and behind the scenes work. So we wanted to introduce them as well. On the next slide, you'll see our agenda for tonight. Fairly basic. We want to really introduce the project to you. This is our first opportunity to meet with you all. Give you a little bit of an overview of the project schedule and some of the big picture items that we're looking at for this initiative. We'll talk a little bit about goals and objectives, which are going to be important to guide the project and help us make some decisions as we go down the road of the project. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the existing conditions that we're already beginning to see in the corridor. And then we'll talk a little bit about engagement and next steps. So we'll dive into that as we move forward. So if we were in person, which hopefully we will be able to do again soon, we really try to use our first meeting as an opportunity for the group to get to know each other. So on this call tonight, we have members of the CAC, the Corridor Advisory Committee, which we'll talk a little bit about the role of the CAC in a minute. But we have a couple of questions here. So if you are on the CAC, we're going to invite you to introduce yourself. If you're representing an association or a group, please let us know who that is. And then if you could just say a sentence or two about your interest and some of the issues that are important to you along the New Hampshire corridor, I think it'll help others get to know who's on the call and who's on the group as we begin to do this work together. So what I will do, because there's many of you, I have the list alphabetically, but I also want to give everyone a moment to kind of get their thoughts together and not put anybody on the spot. So if you want to pass or come back, let me know. I'm happy to, to come back to you if you need another minute to pull your thoughts together. So I'm just going to run down my list alphabetically, and when I call your name, feel free to take yourself off mute and introduce yourself to the group, and again, share a little bit about your interest in the project and issues that are of concern to you along the corridor. So I'm going to call first Kevin Bellinger, and please, apologies if I mispronounce your name. I apologize in advance. Is Kevin on the call? Let's take a look. And we'll do it, I'm gonna give you a couple ahead so you'll know who's next in the queue. So we'll hold on Kevin, and next I'm gonna call Sophie Bareshi, and then Marie Bunch will be after her. So Sophie, if you're on the call, you can take yourself off mute. Okay, 0 for 2. Marie, and then Hector Chang. Marie, are you on the call?
Is it Marie or Michelle Bunch? Do we have a Michelle Bunch here?
Oh,
Yeah,
it says Marie
Michelle
Michelle.
Bunch.
Okay, perfect, great, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm interested in this presentation because it is part of my professional activity. It is more likely personal than I don't participate in any advocacy group. I just have a strong interest in this topic.
Great, thank you for joining us tonight.
Mhm.
Hector Che and then Raka Chowdhury.
Sure. My name is Hector Chang. I'm a new resident of Tacoma Park. So I'm participating as someone that lives here. I was interested in this because I've lived in cities that had really good rapid transit and bus rapid transit, and I would love to see more of it here in Montgomery County. And the most important thing to address along New Hampshire Avenue is people go fast on that road. It feels really unsafe when I walk along it. I haven't lived here long enough, but I know that as a person driving on it once in a while, I feel like I have to keep up. But that means that when I'm walking along it, which I do sometimes, I feel like I might get run over. So it would be great to not have to rely on a car to visit the corridor as well.
Great, thank you for that. And we'll certainly be talking about that as we go through the evening. Raka and then Brian Downey. Okay, so we'll go to Brian and then Eileen Finnegan. Brian, if you're on the call, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, but I don't think you are. So we'll go to Eileen and then Gail Fisher.
Hello, good evening to all. I've been interested in the New Hampshire BRT for a very long time. It actually started with the White Oak Science Gateway. I live in Hillendale, and so I'd like to see that this system really maximize the ridership and has well-placed stations to make sure that everyone on the route really has an opportunity to participate. I'd like to see the dedicated median system that was suggested in the transit plan from White Oak down to Tacoma Park, and how that meshes with the Tacoma Park plan is really a question. I also look forward to having a relationship through this group with Prince George's County as they participate. And we really do need the district to get to Fort Totten. So I trust that those two priorities are part of this plan. So thank you, Sandra.
Great, thank you, Eileen. And we'll talk about all of the jurisdictions and the coordination that we'll need to do on this project. So thank you. Gail and then Richard Garifo. I'm sure I said that wrong. Gail, go ahead.
Hi, Gail Fisher. I'm a resident of Hillendale. I've commuted up and down New Hampshire, both using a bus to get to Fort Totten, as well as driving up and down it, of course. And my mother, who's, she's my mother, she's old and she's a little bit disabled. She walks up and down New Hampshire to get to the grocery stores, which are here. And so, as the Hector Chang said, the New Hampshire needs a significant amount of work in terms of speed, pedestrian friendly. We don't have the pedestrian refuges aren't to regulation. The speed, is too high given the density that's planned. I know Shane Paulin is on with his development down there at Gateway. It's going to increase density right at one of the highest trafficked and highest density intersections in the state, really. And so like all this mix of density, safety for pedestrians, safety for cars, and trying to keep traffic flowing, I think all are critical to what we need to try to strive to achieve. It's not going to be great for anybody. It's not going to be perfect for cars. It's not going to be perfect for pedestrians, but I think that we can work together to find safe, safe as we convert this from sort of this 1960s style roadway to a nice, safe, multi-transportation mode avenue. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Richard and then Gretchen Goldman. Okay, we'll move to Gretchen and then Craig Grunwald.
Hi all, great to be here. Thanks for organizing this. I'm Gretchen Goldman. I am interested in this both from like a personal and professional standpoint. I live in Tacoma Park. I have small children. In normal times, I either take the bus to Fort Tyon or bike, and so I'm very personally interested in this project. Also, because I've been to Bogota and seen the Transmilenio system, which is amazing, and so I feel like I'm excited about what this could be, and the Route 29 one here. That's great, and I'm excited for the potential in this much needed corridor where the bus is sort of barely functional now, especially now that the K9 seems like it's not running. I don't know if that's a temporary change, but so yeah, it is like definitely needed. As far as like the most important issue to address, I'm sort of torn on like what like the single issue is. I like concur with all the safety, pedestrian cyclist safety that everyone has raised, and then in additionally, I'm just very concerned about equity in this corridor. I think we all know, that like this bus, like the bus is going to be disproportionately low income and people of color, and that's not who drives into the city in the same proportions. And so I want to make sure we're giving more people options, and there's more opportunity for everyone to have good mobility choices and non-single occupancy vehicle options as well.
Great, thank you. Craig and then Kaylee Galloud.
I'm Craig Grunwald. I live in Colesville, up at the top of the proposed. Yeah. I'm interested because I think New Hampshire Avenue and just this area in general needs very good transit that's enticing to not just people who don't have a car, but people who have a car, giving people an option to a viable alternative to driving, so we can get into DC without a car, or get to Tacoma Park, or get to White Oak, is very important for curbing climate change and helping traffic. And one of the things to address is just how do we make this enticing? Like I said, how do we lure people out of their cars and onto the bus?
Great, thank you. Kaylee and then June Henderson. I don't think I saw Kaylee. So June and then Miguel Hernandez. June on. Okay. Miguel and then Louis Krupnick. I see Louis. Okay, so we'll go to Louis and then Mara Moser.
Good evening. My name is Lou Krupnick. I'm an active architect and planner, and I've lived along the New Hampshire Avenue corridor for probably 15 years now, and I'm a current resident of Hillendale. I think the opportunity that could be provided by BRT is fantastic. People like me who do commute to the district every day could find it quite advantageous if it worked and if it was sensible and it was reasonable in time. I think it's also important that what's really needed is a quality type of infrastructure that satisfies both pedestrian and vehicular needs along the New Hampshire Avenue corridor. Some say it's too fast. many say it's too slow. I think all would agree the further south we go, the more miserable it becomes. So I think there are definitely solutions out there that could strive to make things better for transit riders and car drivers as well. And I think that whatever level of quality goes into the BRT will in other ways affect the type of development that will happen in the future along New Hampshire Avenue. And I think many would agree that most of the major transportation corridors we have in Montgomery County, like Rockville Pike and Georgia, are pretty miserable places. I remember coming to the area back in 1972, just on a visit, and it was ugly. It was trashy. It's strip development. It's doesn't reflect the quality of environment I think most people would prefer. And I think we can do a lot better. So I'm very excited about this opportunity and look forward to seeing how I can help contribute.
Great, thank you. Maura and then Peter Mayokin.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mara, she said.
Oh, yes.
You hear me? Okay, I live in the Tacoma Park, in the Long Branch area of Tacoma Park, and my kids go to school at Northampton and New Hampshire at St. Francis International School. So I have a lot of experience at both driving northbound and southbound on New Hampshire Avenue every day. Occasionally, I make a valiant effort to walk or bike my kids up to school, which is not a great experience. So I'm excited to be part of this because I think I would be a user. I think the families at the school could benefit from BRT. And I think the most important thing to address is, I'm really concerned about pedestrian safety, bike lanes, things like that. Right now, it's beyond inadequate. And I hope that as part of this project, we're able to build in better protection and infrastructure for people who walk, bike, and roll.
Great, thank you. Peter and then Daphne Palazzi.
Yeah, my name is Peter Miokin. My interest in this study, basically I'm sandwiched. I live in an area sandwiched both by the US 29 BRT as well as the proposed New Hampshire BRT. I also live on the north end of the corridor, just north of Colesville. What are the most important things to address? I think I agree with what everybody said, but I want to make sure that the BRT, to get the ridership it needs a collection system that actually extends into neighborhoods, not just within a half mile of the BRT, but I'd say a good 2 miles to be able to collect people from those areas. The Burt Mill area just directly across from the FDA has a great bus collection system. And I would look for BRT, not only this BRT, but the 29 BRT, 355 BRT, to emulate that and get a route that gets into all the crooks and crannies of a neighborhood to pull out the riders. I agree with Eileen that there should be a dedicated lane. That's the best way for this thing to work. Without that, you're in mixed traffic. We see that with the US 29 BRT system, which is still under study to improve that traffic flow. The other thing is, I think we need not just to look at the current and now situation, but we need to look 10, 15 years into the future to see how BRT satisfies the communities and the economic developments that's going to occur within the community. So if we look at the White Oak area, we had Viva White Oak that'll be coming. That's a huge development. That whole area, just the North White Oak area, is going to be developed quite extensively. So how do we integrate the ridership from those areas where there are going to be several thousand homes and residences built to be able to go in, pull those residences, those that need to go out, go down to the south using the New Hampshire BRT. The whole transit center at White Oak needs to be rethought, because right now it sort of doesn't look like a transit center. You know, a transit center, when someone envisions a transit center, they look at maybe something like what they have down in Langley Park. This is basically a 4 or 5 stops along like 300 feet of roadway on Lockwood Drive. It's really not a transit center. So we need to relook at that. And I think basically it's looking at that center, looking at the Hillendale area, looking at the Langley Park area, and as somebody mentioned, all the way down to Brookland. So we do need a council of government participation in this. And that's about it. I think I've said enough for now.
Great, thank you. Daphne and then Robert Peters.
Hi, I'm Daphne Palazzi. I'm the CEO of CHI Centers, which is a nonprofit organization located in the old Hillendale Elementary School building on New Hampshire Avenue. We support people with intellectual and other developmental disabilities. The majority of our employees don't have cars, and so they depend on the transit system. And the majority of the people we support have physical or other intellectual disabilities and rely on public transit or some sort of adaptive transit. So both in relation to our road frontage and our proximity to, our engagement in Hillendale and White Oak, and also the nature of the people we support and employ, those are my interests for being here.
Great, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Robert Peters and then Shane Pullen. Okay, we'll go to Shale and then Elise Rahimi.
Good evening. My name is Shane Poland. I'm a principal with PS Ventures, which stands for Passionate and Sustainable Ventures. And I'm proud to be working in partnership with the Housing Opportunities Commission as the lead developer on the Hillendale Gateway project, which has been mentioned as the ambitious project we're working on at the intersection of New Hampshire Avenue and the Beltway, effectively. And I'm interested in the study because we are embarking on this very important project, trying to build among the most sustainable buildings in the entire region. And part of the goals of our project are to achieve what the county has set out, which is to try to find alternatives and to having single occupant vehicles, or to have judged by an NADMS or non-auto driver mode share standard. And in order to get folks from being single occupants in vehicles, there need to be alternatives to that. And individual projects can't address that. And that comes to projects like the BRT, which can provide the alternative to riding as a single occupant vehicle in a car. So I'm participating to try to work on an alternative to help projects like Hillendale achieve the goal of getting people out of the car and being a single occupant. And I think that among the most important elements in doing that will be to provide, as others said, an attractive quality system that really is an option that folks will choose to take instead of being a single occupant in their own car. And so I hope that through participation, projects like Hillendale can help influence to make this a better system, because it's projects like Hillendale that will also be providing the density that is also supporting a system like the BRT on New Hampshire Avenue. So I hope that, I learned from a lot of folks who are on the call. I've spent a lot of years working in Hillendale prior to PS Ventures. I spent 17 years working with the Duffy companies. I was headquartered for probably 15 years in Hillendale. I'm familiar with the intersections, and I think everybody wants to see the area improve with better amenities and improve the transportation system, and this is part of that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Elise and then Jim Shippey.
Hi, I'm Elise Rahimi, and I live in Oakview, which is right off of New Hampshire. I moved here just at the start of the pandemic. So I'm new to the area, I guess. I'm interested in really finding out more about the planning that is happening along the corridor along New Hampshire Avenue, and having my voice heard when it comes to what is going to happen. And so I think safety is an important issue. I do think having a multi-use corridor is important, especially during our current climate with climate issues. I think that the traffic flow is a big problem. I do drive to work and I take the 495, but even just getting out of Oakview in the morning is very difficult. But anyway, I just want to hear what other people have to say and put in my 2 cents when I can help.
Great, thank you for being here. Jim and then Peter Tenselhorn. And again, apologies for pronunciation. Okay, I don't think Jim is with us, so Peter and then Clay Tulis.
Hi, my name is Peter. I live in East Silver Spring. I've been a resident of Silver Spring for 14 years. And my interest is mainly on ensuring that the corridor becomes multimodal. I'd like to see that as much as possible. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Clay and then Jason Weaver.
I'm Clay Tunis and I'm starting a group and I hope people will join. It's Hillendale Safe. I'm doing that because Hillendale Citizens Association seems to have gone dormant. I've been on the west side of New Hampshire Avenue for 25 years, which is really, I've seen a lot of action. I saw a body on New Hampshire Avenue covered with a sheet. I've seen cars up on the yards. I've seen of late young men with their little rockets, very loud going down the street. I've also seen school buses come down my street at high speed, and I've ratted on them a number of times. I have no problem with ratting on buses. One thing that I would like to see is that the bus drivers somehow, well, that we hire good people and maybe even incorporate, I don't know what the technology is of these new buses, but maybe a speed inhibitor or something like that. We have, where I am, I'm right across from the Hillendale local park, and which is finally going under its transformation. And then to the left of that is the firehouse. And to the right of that is sheep. A lot on the line. And the buses probably won't have a big, as far as safety, I'm not worried so much about the buses, but yeah, doing something about the road. And what I've been asking for is, I don't care who does it, we need a traffic camera that takes pictures of people and their license plates and sends them bills. And if they get enough bills, their license plates are, their license to drive is revoked. And then they have to go to court. That seems to be the only thing that'll work. Certainly we can't put speed bumps on New Hampshire Avenue. But I'm really excited about the BRT and can't wait to see them roll.
Thank you. Jason and then Dale Wilhelm. Okay, we'll go to Dan and then Elizabeth Williams.
Yeah, I'm Dan Wilhelm. I'm with the Greater Colesville Citizens Association. And I've been involved with the BRT for about 20 years. I was on the county executives task force and other things. I've been a firm advocate of BRT, but BRT by itself is not the solution. As Peter mentioned, we need local buses to get out in the neighborhoods and pick people up and businesses and like that. It really needs to be a system where people don't have to get in their car, period, and to get where they want to go. On New Hampshire Avenue down by Hillendale, I think to get an effective system from the Beltway south of Powder Mill South, you need to address the congestion all the way down to Langley Park. I used to drive that every day, and that was a disaster. I think I could walk faster than I could drive. There's also problems with the 29 corridor stopping at FDA. It meanders too much. That needs to be solved. It needs to be more of a direct shot. I would ask this group to look at a direct connection off of the Federal Research Center over to the White Oak bus stop, the BRT stop. It's tight in there, but I think it's possible. And then we also need to connect the different corridors, the New Hampshire Avenue 29 and the master plan. There's one for Randolph Road, and all those things need to be interconnected so people can get to different places without having to worry about getting in a car. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Elizabeth Williams, I'm not sure if she's here. And then I know that there are a couple of people joined us late, so I want to make sure that we loop back in case we missed anybody. I see June Henderson. So if Elizabeth is not here, then we can go to June and ask you to introduce yourself. No, oh no, thank you. Okay. Okay. Is there anybody else from the CAC that did not have a chance to introduce themselves? You can take yourself off mute. Just let us know. We want to make sure we catch everybody.
Yeah, and Sandra, just so you know, June can't unmute.
I saw. Sorry about that. We're glad you're here. We'll take your participation with your fingers. Okay, so thank you all for sharing, and I think that it's helpful for us to understand as a team where everybody's coming from and the interests, and I think a lot of the issues that you've raised we'll be talking a little bit about further in the presentation. But you know, it's helpful for all of us to hear the interest and the priorities of all the members of the committee. So before I hand it off to jump into kind of the heart and the meat of the project itself, I just wanted to talk briefly about the role of the Corridor Advisory Committee. So when the master plan was adopted for the master plan for transit ways in the county, the council specifically directed staff to work with the community and through these advisory committees. So as opposed to some of the more formal boards and committees, this is an advisory committee. We won't be formally voting on items, but we are looking for your input, your consensus, and we hope that there will be some good, robust conversation. And based on the opening introductions, I have no doubt. I do want to note that we follow the Maryland Open Meetings Act, and I'll send out the link to that, just so it means that all of our meetings are open to the public, and we have to notify you with plenty of advanced notice, and there's a bunch of other things, but I'll send you that link just so that you know what is entailed with that. And another note, just as we put together the membership, we were looking to make sure that we had an inclusive, diverse, and representation from different areas of the corridor. And so we're pleased with this group, and I know that there's still some groups that are not yet represented, but we are working with Prince George's County, even though there's a very small section of our corridor that is in Prince George's County. We're adjacent, and we want to and we've already begun working on a staff level, but we hope that there will be some community participation as well. One final note, just, you know, we ask that you do your best to attend all of the meetings. I know that there's always occasions that there are conflicts. We don't meet that frequently, and so we do hope that you'll be able to attend as many of them as possible. We also are asking, we'll talk a little bit later in the meeting about public engagement, but you are kind of our conduit, an extension of our ability to reach communities beyond our mailing list and listserv. So, we do hope that you will, those of you that are representing organizations and particular groups, if there are listservs or Facebook groups that we may not have access to when there's information about the project, we hope that you will share it with all of those groups, and as well as if you're hearing anything in the community, sharing that back with this group so that we really have a better opportunity to reach communities and populations that maybe we as staff wouldn't be able to. I think that's it for the housekeeping. What we'll do is we have kind of 3 different sections, and we'll pause at the end of each to see if there are any questions, but I'm going to hand it over to Jamie, who is the project manager on the consultant side, and we will have an opportunity for questions a little bit later in the presentation. Jamie?
Great. Thanks, Sandra. Again, I'm Jamie Henson. I'm the consultant project manager. And what I'm going to do is walk us through a little bit of the background of the BRT program in the county, talk through at a very high level, talk through what the project is and is not going to be able to do. And we'll talk through goals and objectives, and then we'll talk through some of the initial analysis that we've performed. We're still very early in the process. We are in the midst of completing our existing conditions analysis, and we are not done. So what you're going to see tonight is our initial take. This is the first glance that we wanted to show you and begin to get your response. So with that, let's go to the next slide. So New Hampshire Avenue was a BRT corridor identified in the countywide transit corridors functional master plan from adopted in 2013. Out of that plan, corridors, a variety of corridors were identified. You can see on the graphic on the right. US 29 was designed first and is now in operation. Beers Mill Roads moved through preliminary design. Then Maryland 355 is also in preliminary design and are proposed for full construction. Funding is in the draft county executive budget. And now we are working on the New Hampshire Avenue project on the planning portion, and also at the same time the New Hampshire Avenue is being planned. The effort for North Bethesda is also being planned. So those are both going through this study phase. Next slide, please. Oop. And so before, I also want to talk about what is BRT. We talk a lot about BRT, but BRT can mean a variety of things. And so what we think about when we think about BRT, BRT is a faster, higher quality bus service. It provides frequent service, reduced number of stops, improved travel times, a higher reliability so that it comes when it's supposed to come, and it creates an attractive service that's competitive with the automobile, with automobile travel. And it's achieved through really 3 things, and we'll talk through these in a touch more detail: enhanced vehicles, enhanced stations, and enhanced operations. So let's talk about the vehicles first. The vehicles are larger, they're more spacious, they have multiple doors, they're easier to move around for folks in wheelchairs, for people who have small children and strollers, and to get bikes on board. Boarding is fast. There are easy payment options, either pay fare at the station or potentially tap on the bus. And then there's an improved experience on the vehicle. So it's onboard Wi-Fi, there's USB charging ports. And so the vehicle is a much higher quality service. In addition, there are enhanced stations. There's near level boarding, which means you can easily roll onto the bus. So you're not lifting up, you're literally rolling across. You can board with your bike. There's no need to use a bike rack in front of the bus or for the bus to kneel for wheelchairs. There will be connections for pedestrians and cyclists. Bicyclists and pedestrian infrastructure on adjacent streets will be incorporated to make sure that folks can get to those stations. We'll incorporate micromobility options, which consist of things like bike share, so capital bike share, scooter share, or any future shared mobility service where it's possible and practical. And then there'll be an improved rider experience. And so what that means is that there'll be real-time arrival information. So you'll know when the buses are coming. There'll be protection from the weather. There'll be shelters. And then there'll also be public art. And finally, there will be enhanced operations. So travel will be faster. Buses will arrive more frequently than traditional bus services. There will be fewer stops than the traditional bus services, which also allow for fewer pauses in travel, which get you where you're going much more quickly. There'll be faster boarding from easier payment options that may include payment at the stations or tapping for entry at all doors. And then there'll also be prioritization of the bus service. So there's the potential for dedicated lanes for buses to operate in. There will be special traffic lights where we're prioritizing buses at intersections called transit signal priority, or if you hear me say, one of us say TSP, that's what we're referring to, where buses can communicate with intersection signals to pass more quickly and reduce delay. And then we'll have special lanes called queue jumps for which are relatively short distance lanes, often doubling as right turn lanes that allow buses to cut to the front of the queue. And so that's how the operations will be improved. So what we want to do next is show you a brief video. I'm sure many of you may have seen this, but it's a couple of minutes long, where the county has put together with an overview of the program. Oh no, I am not hearing this. Are others?
Can you hear it?
I cannot hear it. We may have to forego the video.
It's just whoever shares the screen has to hit share sound, the share sound.
And you maybe, and Tara, when you shared, you may not have done that. What we'll do is we'll send out the link in a follow-up with the additional information. And I forgot to mention that we'll share all of the slides. We know there's going to be a lot of information, but we'll include the link so you all can watch that after.
And so Tara will jump in here and begin to talk through a little bit more where we currently are, and then I'll jump back in just a moment.
Yes, thank you, Jamie. This graphic here wanted to point out that we are still fairly early in the overall process. The corridor study is one of the first steps in a multi-step process to implement BRT. So the master plan that Jamie referenced determined that BRT should be implemented on this corridor. And now with this corridor study, we are determining broadly how BRT should be implemented on this corridor. So this effort focuses on defining broad characteristics of BRT on New Hampshire Avenue. It does not yet address the environmental issues or more detailed design components. Those will come in later phases. And it is also not fully a safety study or a bicycle and pedestrian study. And while funding has been identified for this corridor study that we are a part of now, the funding for future phases has not yet been identified. So something to keep in mind as well. So as part of this study, we will be identifying termini locations and how the service will interact with major transit services like the new Purple Line, as well as the US 29 flash service. We will determine where the BRT service will run. So as people pointed out earlier in the introductions, the master plan indicated or suggested BRT in dedicated lanes south of US 29, and then it suggested shared or mixed traffic north of US 29. And so part of this study will be to evaluate that and perhaps confirm or adjust that suggestion and look into any other operational changes as a result of adjusting that modal priority. We're also going to look at the station locations. So again, those were proposed in the master plan or recommended. And so we'll be looking to evaluate those and determine if we need to adjust them or add any or remove any and be more precise about where the station should be within the right of way. And we're also going to be looking to identify bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure needed to access this transit service safely. So a little bit about the corridor. So the New Hampshire Avenue Study Corridor is 8.5 miles long, It extends from the District of Columbia border around Eastern Avenue to the Colesville Park and Ride, just north of Randolph Road. And as mentioned, we are still, part of the study is to come up with those more specific termini locations. As was pointed out, this is a very multi-jurisdictional corridor. So as mentioned, most of it is within Montgomery County, but there is a portion of the corridor within Prince George's County as well. And if the southern termini has the potential to connect to Fort Totten and be within the District of Columbia as well. And so that multi-jurisdictional coordination will be really important. And then again, the corridor crosses with this new Purple Line service, as well as the US 29 Flash service, and also have the Tacoma Langley Transit Center, as well as the White Oak Transit Center. Again, you all mentioned those in the introductions. And so opportunities to connect with those services will also be evaluated. And the road is owned by SHA, and so coordination with SHA, in addition to Prince George's County, the district, and Tacoma Park, will all be really important. Wanted to give you an overview of the analysis that we're doing currently as part of this study, which includes looking at transit operations, traffic operations, multimodal connection or multimodal conditions, travel patterns, safety, which was obviously raised as a big concern, existing plans, demographics and jobs, and land use and destinations, all as they relate to the character of this corridor. So here's a high level overview of the schedule. The whole study is assumed to be about 16 to 18 months in total. And the schedule is framed around 3 phases of public engagement, with our first large public meeting coming up in early May. And so this first phase of engagement is really focused on existing conditions, goals, objectives, purpose, and need, as well as initial concepts for BRT. And then in the second phase, we'll be looking at alternatives development and analysis. And in the third phase, we'll be looking at a more preferred alternative and advancing that alternative. You can see here that we've set up touch points with the CAC with this group of people before and after public meetings. And the goal there is to engage with you all and kind of present what we're coming up with as a checkpoint as well. So both leading up to the public engagement as well as afterwards, to verify that we are considering the public feedback appropriately. And so this is kind of an overview of that schedule of our meeting with you all to bring you our analysis and our alternative development, as well as to seek feedback on how we're engaging with the community. And that concludes that first part. So I think we want to open it up and ask if anyone has any questions so far.
Yeah, focusing on anything, just clarifying questions. We'll have kind of general conversation at the end, but if there's anything that we just presented where there are specific questions, we can take a minute to do those before we move on. And again, you can feel free to put something in the chat or use the raise hand feature. Dan, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I'm thinking you need more CAC meetings. The last one's between the 4th and 5th one, I think it is like a year between that. I think you should have more meetings.
Yeah, well, I mean, we will, the goal is to make sure that they are pretty regular at the key check-in points, and the whole project is about 15 months. 15 months. So I don't know which dates were on there, but we'll
well, you got fall of
winter 2022
and winter of 23. That's better.
Yeah, but right, so that goes fall and then to the winter. So between next September, October timeframe, and then following up with kind of a December, January timeframe. So I would expect, just in terms of an expectation of how much time we're requesting, that you should expect that every 2 to 3 months we will be getting this group together, and it may be a little bit more frequent, a little bit less, depending on where we are, but I would imagine that every 2 to 3 months is about right over the course of the project. And this is intended to be illustrative. We haven't kind of mapped out all of the dates yet. So we'll make sure to keep everybody updated as we refine the schedule. Are there any other clarifying questions, or we'll jump into the next section of the presentation? And again, we'll have time at the end. Go ahead. Yes, Clifford, is that? Oh,
Since
Michelle and then Clifford. Go ahead.
yeah, since the project is about helping people get out of the car, so what is the what the project sees or prepare for some people that live in remote section? That's mean in some part that is not close to the corridor or intersection. They will have to drive from the place to get the bus. Is there any provision on where they should park?
So yeah, so I think, so I do want to mention that, and we have representatives of the transit department, that there's just kicking off a comprehensive look at our transit network throughout the county. And one of the things that's going to be important, as you mentioned, is making sure that not just having good service on the corridor, but making sure that people from the community and from the neighborhoods have an easy way to get there. Some people will want to drive, and there are some park and ride along the corridor, but we also want to really make sure that we're providing high quality transit connections as well as bike and pedestrian. So we'll be looking at all of that as we advance the project, but that's a good point. And then Clifford, and then I think we'll move back to Jamie for the next section. So go ahead, Clifford. We're not hearing you. I don't think you're on mute, but we're not hearing you. We're still not hearing you. Why don't can I ask that you put it in the chat and then we can respond? Okay, great. Okay, so Jamie, why don't you continue and then we can loop back once we have Clifford's question.
There was, Jamie, you're on mute. But there was also one other question in the chat that said, at what point will the issue of dedicated lanes be really addressed?
Jamie, you want to take that one, or?
Yeah, that will actually come as we advance into more detailed conceptual considerations and alternative development. So from a timing perspective, that's probably going to be, we'll have this first public meeting, we'll get feedback on what people think that the project needs to do. And then over the summer, we would be thinking through ways that would improve that, one of which presumably would be the potential for dedicated lanes. And then we would test that and come back to the group and show people what sort of conditions they could expect.
Okay, so Jamie, I know there may be some other questions, so if you have pen and paper, jot it down so you don't forget, and we'll have time later on.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and move into the next section about goals and objectives. And I'll actually try to pick up the pace a little bit because I do want to honor the 8:30 closing time, and we have some polls where we want folks to contribute as well. I'll also note that while it's important to participate, this presentation will indeed be posted, so you will not miss anything, even if we hurry. So our goals and objectives are informed by a variety of sources and groups. They come from previous input. The county's developed BRT program goals that are also overarching goals for each project. So the overarching goals, what you're seeing for New Hampshire Avenue corridor, are actually the same goals for the North Bethesda corridor as well. However, objectives will differ between the projects based on the needs of the corridor. So the needs will help dictate the objectives. And while many objectives may indeed be similar, you'll see an example in just a moment, or even the same, but others will be completely different. In addition, the importance of each of those goals for the corridors may also be different. So things that are important in the North Bethesda study may not be all that important to this group, and that's okay. We want to try to tease that out as well and understand. a part of today's effort is to introduce the county's BRT program goals and get some feedback from the group of stakeholders on the importance of each and begin the process of identifying those objectives. This is important because we'll use these goals and objectives to guide the development of concepts and ultimately alternatives, and then we'll test. So everything that we're going to test will be testing back against those goals and objectives. So when we evaluate it, we're evaluating against how a concept or an alternative is achieving the goals and objectives set out. And so let me walk briefly through the program goals. The first goal is mobility choices. And what that means, I'll try to give a brief explanation. It means improving access to jobs, improving access to activity centers and community facilities. So making sure we're giving access or multiple options for mobility and improving access. Sustainable solutions. And what we mean by that is minimizing the environmental impacts of the project, and then at the same time, utilizing cost-effective design techniques to make it more easy to implement. Corridor safety. We want to improve the safety of our streets and the livability and the wellness of our communities with these projects. Economic growth. We want to promote economic development and serve that development that will come with appealing and functional transit. And then quality service. So provide a fast, reliable, efficient, and well-connected transit service. And then community equity, providing improved and accessible transit service for underserved populations or equity populations, and we'll actually define that in a moment. And I wanted to give just a brief example of what we'll be doing next. So what we'll do is take a goal, quality service, and then we'll develop objectives, and then we'll pair those with metrics. This is an example. It may turn out to be this way. It's pretty likely. But one of the objectives of quality service is probably going to be something like improve speed and reliability of transit service in the corridor. And the way we would measure that objective would be things like assessing the transit travel time, assessing the transit segment speed, so how fast the transit is moving in various portions of the corridor. And then we'll measure the reliability at which the buses can achieve the headways or the time between the buses that are scheduled to arrive. So do they bunch up or are they separated out the way they're supposed to? Do they come every 6 or 8 or 10 or however many minutes, or do they come 2 or 3 at a time and then you have to wait 20 minutes? And so those will be some of the metrics. So we're not able to go through these in detail today. I think we'd love your feedback, and we'll actually go through an exercise now where we'll do some polling to get some feedback on the goals. But this is the direction we'll be moving. And so, Tara, I will let you jump in if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, we're going to use this platform Poll Everywhere to engage you all. And so I'll paste into the chat the link there. And so if you can copy and paste that into your browser or on your cell phone, it's pollev.com/LAURAA161. And that should bring you to the polling site. We'll give everyone a minute to do that. When you get there, you're going to see, when I flip to the next screen, you're going to see this question, which is going to ask you to rank the goals to get a feel for how you all are prioritizing these goals within this corridor. And so in order to select your ranking, you're going to hover kind of to the side here and be able to access these arrows. And if you click on the arrows, you'll be able to rearrange these goals in the order of your priority, with putting your highest priority at the top. I'm going to go to the next slide, and hopefully, if you have navigated to the site, you should be seeing this question, and you can enter it whenever you're ready. And if anyone's having, yeah, go ahead.
And then make sure that as you order them, so you'll move them up or down and you'll toggle back and forth to get them in the position you think are the most important, from most at the top to least at the bottom. And then make sure you hit the blue bar at the bottom that says submit response.
Does anybody need help? Just as a reminder, the link is at the top of this slide. If you don't see it in the chat, we put it up there as well.
Do you have a summary slide with the definitions with those, like these little blurbs? You know, you read off all those do you have like a summary slide with those, actually what those meant?
I can put it in the chat. I'll put it in the
Yes.
chat.
Oh, thank you.
Sandra, you can paste that directly from the speaker notes.
Yep, that's what I'm doing. Okay, so those are in there now. And again, after the meeting, you'll get lots of information, so you can review it again at your leisure. Tara, how many responses do we have so far? Just, can you tell? Oh, sorry, I don't want to make, it's okay, you can leave it.
I'm not sure. Maybe we'll give everyone another 30 seconds or so.
And while we're
How to interact? How to?
If you click on, let's say you click on quality service on the left, you'll see an up and a down arrow. And you can decide if you want to move it up, you can click the up arrow until it's in the position that you would like. And if you want to move a different one down or up, you click on that one, and then there should be an up and a down arrow. Do you see that?
I see it, but I clicked, nothing moved yet. Maybe I didn't do it properly. Oh, okay, I see.
Great.
All right.
Okay, we'll give another 20 seconds and then people can continue. It'll still populate. We'll still be able to see those results after. But we're starting to see some clear trends here, which is interesting.
And again, as a reminder, what this allows us to do is the project team is help us design a project that fits the needs as people that are in the corridor who would be using this service would want to see. And so if quality service is something that folks are seeing as the most important, we can really make sure to focus on designing an approach that really facilitates quality service.
All right, we'll move on to the next slide. Jamie, are you?
Yep. So at this point, we'll shift gears a little bit, excuse me, and provide a brief overview of the corridor. So this is where I want to talk briefly through some of the initial analysis we've done. So what you'll hear in this section is a lot of mapping, a lot of discussion about demographics and populations and jobs. What you won't hear quite yet is a discussion of transit performance or traffic analysis. Those elements are not yet done. We'll have the public meeting the first portion of May, give or take, and we'll be able to present that then. But we wanted to give you an update on where we are with what we've done to date. So let's skip to the next. There we go. So this is, I think I don't need to tell you, this is an incredibly diverse corridor. And there are a wide variety of ethnic groups and nationalities who call the New Hampshire Avenue Corridor home. Hispanic and Latino, Black and African American, African. There are many, many languages spoken: Spanish, Amharic, French, Vietnamese, and many more that I'm not mentioning. And I don't skip them to slight you. It's just that there's so many languages, and the diversity is so rich. That I can't get to everybody, and I'm sorry for that. But it's really important to make sure that that's an understood condition. There's also a diverse set of jobs along the corridor. Many are low wage. There's a high number of low wage jobs in the corridors, and many of those jobs often have commute needs that are outside of the traditional peak period. So it's not a 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning or 4:30 to 5:30 in the afternoon, and it's people coming at a variety of times. In addition, next slide, please. There is a wide population of equity communities in the corridor. Equity has been defined a couple of ways in our region, one way by the county and a slightly different way by the Council of Governments, the MWCOG, Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. If you hear us say COG, that's who we're referring to. So that's the regional body. So the county defines it characterized by high concentrations of lower income people, people of color, or people who may not speak English, or or may speak English less than very well. The COG equity mapping considers it slightly different, but the important thing to note here is that much of the area, both in the Montgomery County side, and you can see the colorations, the purple are where there are Montgomery County classifications for equity zones. The blue are where they're the Council of Governments. The purple are where the purple are where both Montgomery County and COG. The red is only Montgomery County and the blue is COG. The reason that there's so many blue is because this is actually Prince George's County, so the county doesn't apply their equity mapping to Prince George's County. If it was, there'd be an awful lot of purple on this map. And so I just to try to clarify. But the important thing is that equity emphasis and focus areas are roughly 2/3 of this quarter. There's poverty, high levels of poverty between the Beltway and University. And then broadly, low car ownership south of the Beltway. Next slide, please. Now I want to shift to talk a little bit more about character nodes, and I'll briefly go over these character nodes. This is, again, high level, but there's multifamily housing, much multifamily housing between the Beltway and University, or when I say University, it's also Tacoma Langley Transit Center as well. There's generally commercial and multifamily housing at the major nodes in Cross Street, whether that's US 29 in the White Oak area, or Hillendale, or along University or the Maryland Gateway. Generally, those overlap. And then much single family residential in both the north and then really the Tacoma Park portions in the south. And then obviously there's the FDA campus. And so this summarizes some of the big picture nodes. And there's obviously active development in the area. We've talked about the Hillendale Gateway. It's also worth noting that the Purple Line is in development. The state of Maryland is moving forward with the Purple Line now, and that will come online in the next few years, but that is an active development. Specifically, bike and pedestrian improvements are in the design process in Tacoma Park. You can begin to see that in the southern portion of the corridor. And then there's significant master plan developments, both White Oak and Viva White Oak, as well as the FDA campus expansion in this corridor. And I want to shift gears a little bit to talk about the multimodal connectivity. And generally, when we say multimodal, it tends to talk about bicycle and pedestrian access. And as many have noted, there's limited bicycle and pedestrian network both along New Hampshire, as well as connecting from the neighborhoods to New Hampshire. And what exists is often uncomfortable. It provides an uncomfortable pedestrian and bike experience. And you can see some of the photographs on the side here, where you've got disjointed sidewalks and a bus stop that's on a four-ish foot strip of concrete between two streets. I'd also note that there are many, many bus stops along the corridor, which basically drop off many people on these sidewalks so that they're going up and down, experiencing these conditions and difficulty in connectivity all along the corridor. There's also pretty significant network limitations. And what that means is there's not a lot of parallel facilities. There's not a lot of redundancies in the network. What we've shown on the right is a graphic. The blue line is our corridor, so Maryland 650 New Hampshire Avenue, which is a principal arterial, which means a major road. And you can see that there are actually very few other roads that run parallel to this. This is a map of the darker black, the thicker black lines are principal arterials. The skinnier black lines are minor arterials. Now we don't show the Beltway because that's not really the same along the same corridor as we are. We're trying to show facilities that are parallel. And what that means is that there are few options for people to use parallel services. So the street has to serve multiple modes and different types of trips, and it focuses vehicle travel in particular on this facility. And so as a result, this facility serves a high volume of vehicles, in particular around the Beltway. There's also service roads for access. So service roads were built to have a bit more protected access. There are many driveways that open directly, that would otherwise open directly onto a principal arterial. And then it's also worth noting that the State Highway Administration owns the facility. And so whatever we're going to do here will take much coordination. As we mentioned earlier, this is a multi-jurisdictional effort, and it will be important to bring people along, our partners, our jurisdictional partners along with us as we advance this project. And as many of you have mentioned, there are safety concerns along the corridor. Between 2015 and 2019, there were 9 fatal crashes within the study corridor, of which 6 were cyclist or pedestrian fatalities. In that time period, there were almost 800 injury crashes and over 1,400 property damage only crashes. What we're noting on the graphic on the right is the high injury network. The high injury network highlights the roads with the highest serious and fatal crash rates. The northernmost portion is around Colesville. The portion in the middle is roughly between the Beltway and University. And I should note at this point that there's also a parallel safety study going on, the Maryland 650 New Hampshire Avenue High Injury Network Safety Study. This is sponsored by the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, their regional roadway safety program. The county, Montgomery County, as well as Prince George's County, are co-sponsors of this effort and are co-leading this. And what we would expect is that the results of this process will begin to help identify some strategies to improve safety along the corridor. Now, given that there's a lack of comfortable pedestrian and bike connectivity and road design, it's really no surprise that we're seeing a lot of crashes along the corridor, with a specific concentration at these 2 areas. When we get to the future design of the project, we will be looking at areas where there are known challenges and some of the things that BRT project can accomplish. We'll take a strong focus on BRT station access, so making sure that pedestrians and bicyclists in particular can get to those stations. And where we find additional opportunities along the corridor and at intersections with other nodes, we'll take those opportunities to improve safety with a focus on station access and intersection safety. I also want to talk a little bit about origins and destinations. So where people who live in the corridor are going to work, and where people who work in the corridor are coming from their homes. Our initial assessment of origin destinations consider people who work in the corridor, and that's referred to as corridor employees. That's kind of in the aqua color. And you can see that noted on the top. There are a total of 14,000 corridor employees noted here. And then it also notes residents who are employed, but not necessarily in the corridor, as employed residents. And so these are the total employed residents that live in the corridor, and that's the 31,857 number. There are 31,857 people who live in a half-mile border of this corridor who work, but not necessarily in this corridor. And so what we wanted to say is that what we found when we did an initial evaluation, that there are really few people who both live and work in the corridor. Most employees working in the corridor live somewhere else and have to commute here. Most residents who are working and live on the corridor work outside of the corridor. And what that means is that there's a dramatic need for connectivity to other transit services in the corridor to get people where they're going to need to go. It's not just about getting people up and down because they live in one part and work in another part of the corridor. It's that they live in the corridor and work over here or down here, or they live over here and they work in the corridor. And so connections are going to be really a key element of this study. And then we wanted to also highlight the transit connectivity in the corridor. There's through bus service from White Oak to Fort Totten Metro. That's the K6. I think somebody had mentioned that the K9 had been in service, but not now. There's frequent service to Silver Spring and Tacoma Park. So to Silver Spring serves the right on routes 20 and 16 serve Silver Spring, and the Route 16 serves Tacoma Metro on the other end. And these are relatively frequent services. There are multiple major frequent crossing services, the Route 29 Flash, the C2, the C4, the future Purple Line, the F4, 15. And then there's really high transit ridership at the south end of the corridor, really at and around University and south of there. There's really high transit ridership. And so now we wanted to shift to ask another poll question. Tara, would you mind jumping in again, please?
Yep, and so if you go right back to that same link here, hopefully I still have it. There's going to be a new question up there asking, are there other corridor concerns or characteristics that we should be thinking about?
Right. So thinking about, you know, with the acknowledgement that we haven't done all the analysis yet, we haven't presented traffic analysis, we haven't presented a full analysis of transit. What are the things that we missed? What are the things that we should think about?
And this is just an open answer, so you can enter.
Right. And so what will, I'm sorry, Tara.
No, go ahead.
And as people respond, you'll start seeing answers scroll across the screen. So you should see a variety of concerns that people may have. Yeah, I think the balancing modes and the limited right way will ultimately become one of the keys in managing trade-offs. Yes, we've looked at ages as well. Okay. Any others? We're at 8:21, so I know we're going to cut folks off a little bit. Let's leave it for maybe 30 more seconds to get closer to the end and leave at least a couple of minutes. Right, interconnection between BRT corridors and other services as well.
And Jamie, we'll leave this open. Folks can keep putting things in, and then we'll share the results when we send the follow-up information.
Perfect.
So we can move to the next section and folks can continue while we.
Perfect. All right. And so this is the last, there's a couple of brief sections left, and then we'll wrap up or open it up to a few questions at the end. But we also wanted to talk, as we mentioned, about engaging the public. As we mentioned, part of the role of the CAC is to help guide the public engagement process, and then to verify that we're actually reaching people where they are. There's going to be a variety of public engagement events. We'll have public meetings. I've mentioned there'll be one in early May. We'll have pop-up meetings. We're working toward having pop-up meetings where we're going out and interacting with people, first probably at bus stops, to try to invite people to the process, but we're open to any number of other opportunities such as community meetings or employer meetings. We have, as a part of this effort, we intend to go to communities and employers to talk about the project, to explain what is being considered in this project and what some of the results are. We obviously have the Corridor Advisory Committee, which is you all, but we also have a technical advisory committee, which consists of jurisdictional partners. It can consist of various groups within the county DOT, but also will include folks from SHA, as well as Tacoma Park, City of Tacoma Park, as well as Prince George's County, as well as WMATA. And we'd love to have DDOT participate as well too. So we'll have venues for those, and then an agency advisory committee, which allows us to coordinate with more of the agency director level to make sure that we are, from a policy perspective, addressing the needs of each agency well. Next slide. And so we'll skip over, we had another poll planned, but we'll skip to next steps in order to give folks an opportunity to have some feedback. So next steps. Let's skip to the next slide. So what we'll be doing next is completing the existing conditions analysis. We'll be more fully developing goals, objectives, and measures of effectiveness. That's the MOE, measures of effectiveness. We'll engage additional stakeholder groups. We'll have our first public meeting in May, but we'll start having outreach, as I mentioned, at pop-ups starting in late April in that first week of May. And then we'll begin to develop initial corridor concepts, which will show people what BRT could be. It's not what it has to be, but what it could be, and begin to get feedback and see what folks feel might meet their needs. And so with that, let's go to the end and for questions.
Yeah, so we'll open it up, and I know that we're coming up on 8:30, but we do want to give people an opportunity. As you're thinking of your questions, whether you want to put them in the chat or raise your hand and come off of mute. What I'll mention is that if you have ideas about communities or listservs or Facebook groups that we may not know about, that would be a good way to get the word out about public meetings or information about the project. Feel free, and I'll put this again in the follow-up email, to send me those ideas, because we know that you all are much more embedded in the community and may have ideas and access to groups that we don't. So we ask that you think about how we can get the word out as broadly as possible. Think apartment building, lobbies, think, community centers and things like that. So if you have ideas, shoot them our way, because we want to be as creative and reach as many folks in the corridor as we can. And again, while I can't believe, oh wait, are there any questions in the chat that we missed? I just want to make sure. So go ahead.
Do we raise our hand, or how do you want to? Oh,
Gail, I'll call on you first.
Okay, Gail, for sure. Sorry. Are you also doing this in Spanish? Or I know you mentioned there's a billion, 33 or however many other languages. So, but I think Spanish is probably predominant south of the Beltway, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Or any other languages. Maybe I should.
Great question. So we are definitely preparing materials for our pop-up events and the public meeting in both English and Spanish, and as a starting point. But we do have translation services at the county. So if there are folks who need additional translation services, we will be providing those. So we do want to, as you're talking about the project, if there are communities that you know of with a particular language need, let us know, and we can work to make sure that they're accommodated. Great point. Yeah, so go ahead and raise your hand, and I'll just read the question. There's a couple of questions in the chat. So there's a question about the folks who live and work in the corridor, who work and live in the corridor, how far are they commuting? So I think when we get to the origins and destinations, which is our kind of one of our next steps, we'll have a better idea of where people are coming to and from, which will help us overlay the existing transit network, and we'll be able to take that and look a little bit more closely at where people are trying to get to and from. So that'll be one of the next things that we bring back to this group. I don't see any other questions.
I don't know why you can't see my hand. I have my hand raised. I don't know if there's some reason you can't see it, but
because it's it blends into your background. Go ahead, Gretchen.
So well, first I'd say on the languages, at least in my area, translating to Amharic, I don't think I'm saying that correctly, but Amharic, the Ethiopian would be helpful and relevant, and which is the southern part of the corridor. And then I was also going to say, if maybe you would do this, but for like public meetings, it would be helpful for me for distribution if there was some sort of like flyer, like just like a graphic that would have it, because that makes it easy. Like my son goes to a Spanish speaking preschool at Langley Crossroads, and so like that's a good access to a lot of people that live and work there.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, we will for the public meeting, we do the CAC, obviously, where it's a smaller group, and so our outreach is not, we don't intend to have hundreds of people, but for the public meeting, we really do want to cast a wide net. And so we do a direct mailing in the corridor, but we also have some graphics and we'll have some postcards or materials that we'll share. And if you all have ideas of where to put them and get the word out, that would be really helpful. Other questions at this point? And again, we'll be sending out all of the meeting materials with some additional links, and at any point, if there are questions that come up or you need additional information, my email is here. The team will be happy to get whatever information and answer any questions that come up. What Eileen is asking about the location for the public meeting. So the first one, we're going to do a virtual, and we're thinking about the best way to do that so that people can have an opportunity to really engage and not just listen. And we hope that from the future meetings, we will be able to meet in person, and we're open to suggestions about locations that you think might be, central or a good place for us to engage with a big group of people. And we're also, I think as many of us are experiencing, we do anticipate that there will also be a virtual option. So even though we will try to have future meetings in person, we're going to be thinking about the best way to also have an option, whether it's a recording or some static information that we can also make available virtually for folks. Because what we've seen through the pandemic is that we're getting really good engagement virtually, and we don't want to lose out on that just because the pandemic hopefully is receding. So if you have ideas of locations and things like that, definitely share those with us as well. I see Craig, you have your hand up.
No, it was already answered, just like details for the public meetings.
Yeah, great. So we will be sending out electronic information once we finalize the date for the first one, which again will be virtual. We're going to do a direct mailing, and we'll share all of that information, and again ask that you use your personal or community networks to share that information as well. We'll do one last question, given that we're almost at time, and if not, I want to really thank you all for joining the CAC and helping us, because it's really important to the county and to the project team to make sure that we are, we've got lots and lots of data and doing lots and lots of analysis, but you all are the ones that live on the corridor and have the real life experience. And that's an important piece that we need to make sure we're all considering jointly, and all of your voices are important. So we want to thank you all for taking time on a weeknight to come out. And again, we'll follow up with some follow-up information, and we look forward to working with you for this project. So thank you all and have a good evening.